I just have been scanned.
Probably an entirely different type though, Councillor Abbott. Welcome along.
Absolutely, thank you.
Just a reminder, Lynn, that you'll need to have your video on during the meeting.
Yeah.
So, councillors, just before we kick off, a reminder of the updated protocols that we've had in the email from Mr. Morris around spacing. Obviously, that's meant an adjustment to the layout, and we've got the Les Nessman ruled lines in between you and your neighbour. It also sadly reduces the number of people we can have in the public gallery. Fortunately enough for our public forum speakers today. As chair, I get to have my mask off for the majority of the meeting, but if you are masked on, and by all means please remove them if you're speaking to the meeting, but make sure you put them back on. And it is kind of like being on an Air New Zealand flight. If you've got to have a drink, obviously don't suck it through the mask. Well, you could filter out the tea leaves. Before we kick off, Lynn, there is a late item that we'll be receiving, and it might be that we're able to have that emailed through to you, but it's only just been brought to us as a hard copy now, okay? But it's a relatively short one, and staff will go through it at the time. Are you comfortable with that, Lindsay?
Absolutely.
Wonderful, thank you. Councillor, staff, members of the public, my apologies for the delay. Thank you for your attendance. I'll declare the meeting open. Obviously, we have Councillor Abbott on Zoom. I have apologies from Councillor Clark, Councillor Pottinger, Mrs. Coote, and Lindsay McKenzie. Would somebody like to move that those received? Ms. Cook and Mrs. Soper, Councillor Soper, sorry. Put that all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Two items in public forum, both around vaccination passports. First up, Anna, welcome along if you'd like to.
Yeah.
Anne. Sorry, Anne.
No, you're not.
My apologies.
No, thank you for having me. Hi, Cura, thank you for allowing me to speak today. I just want to share a few thoughts around vaccination passports. I'm obviously fully vaccinated myself and believe that vaccination is the best way to control COVID in the community. However, having been brought up in Invercargill and lived overseas in London for a few years, we came back to Invercargill, my husband and myself, to bring up our family. And we probably used council services regularly on a weekly basis, i.e. when the kids were little, we took them to the library for Saturday morning reading and craft activities. Later on, we would take them to the pool when they were older for swimming lessons. And again, museums on wet, rainy days to see Henry, and the observatory on Tuesday nights to look at the stars. So part of our weekly routine as a family living in Invercargill was very much using those facilities, and that's why we came back here, because they were accessible and also cheap, if not free. However, my concern is that I have a lot of friends, family, workmates who have children similar ages that can no longer access these services I've just spoken about. If we were looking at only 3 months, maybe 6 months, I would just say to them, well, suck it up. That's life. You know, we all had to suffer because of COVID. But because I don't know if anyone in this room can quantitatively say how long this is going to go for, I would have liked to have seen, I guess, a bit more thought put into it, maybe a longer term plan to cater for this unique new group of Invercargill ratepayers who, through their own personal choices, which will affect their children, they cannot access certain council services anymore. I just had a wee bit of a look at the long-term plan, thinking, well, you know, long-term, it'd be good to see where you guys have sort of thought we are heading as a city. And I just read certain things which probably annoyed me a wee bit, was like council will continue to consider the needs of all its users of its services because our population is becoming more diverse. And I know we think more of ethnic diversity, but this is choice diversity based on health. Again, we've got a new diverse group of people in our community that we have to consider. The other thing I looked at is you mentioned COVID in your long-term plan that was ratified in June, and you say that you will measure responses and that on the long-term impacts on the well-being of communities that require a long-term perspective in response. And I don't see you doing that in this instance, a long-term response to COVID. I see more of a knee-jerk reaction to what can be a scary situation. And I appreciate that your concern is for safety, but I would like to have seen you look at different options for maybe certain days for the pool to be just used for open to everybody. I appreciate that a lot of things can go online, but the pool can obviously not be accessed online. And the other thing is part of your decision-making process, again, you mentioned about active listening and honesty with each other and respect. And I don't know if you've actually had a chance to listen to people's comments and gauge how many people are using these services in the community that aren't vaxxed, and also their thoughts towards it. So that's just my observation as a ratepayer and also someone who values the free and accessible services that Invercargill has to offer to enhance well-being of families in our community, which I've greatly appreciated myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne. Councillors, open for questions. If not, sorry, Evelyn, there you go.
I struggle with the idea that we are being blamed because other people have made decisions that affect children. The parents of the children are the people who are making those decisions, not us. We're making decisions on
Ms.
behalf
Cook,
of the majority.
there must be a question.
Sorry, there is. So how do you rationalise that?
Okay.
We have to rationalise that.
Yeah, I rationalise the fact that adults make decisions and they bear the consequences. And I respect that, but you've got a whole lot of under 12-year-olds that can no longer access these services because of their parents' decisions, and that's sad. For instance, I talked about used to go to the observatory with our son, take them to I don't know if you can do that anymore. He's now a software engineer in Edinburgh, leading a team of software scientists that develop satellites for NASA, and that came from accessing that service. I don't know what could come from visiting a swimming pool, but maybe something of a similar ilk.
Medal.
What's that?
Gold medal.
Medal, exactly. And it's the children that I feel for. And the worst scenario would be those parents would drop their kids at the pool unsupervised. You know, and I know that's been an issue in the past, and I would hate to see that happen. I agree that adults make choices, but the people I've talked about, the friends, family, you know, they are sane, normal, caring people who care about their families. And for whatever thought process, they have come to the conclusion it's not right for them or their families to be vaccinated. I personally may not agree with them, but they are there and they're in the community, and we need to accommodate the fact they do not think the same as everybody else or the majority of people in our community.
Councillor Arnold.
That's all I don't really say. No. No. My question to you is just a bit of a question. Is part of the frustration, in your view, due to the fact that since our last lockdown, we've all been pretty much carrying on as per normal. We've all been sitting close together here, no masks. Anybody could come into here. Everybody could use all the facilities. Yet somebody's made a ruling in Wellington that has actually changed everything. Yet nothing has actually changed. Do you think that's part of the frustration?
No.
Because part of the reason I'm feeling that people don't get vaccinated is possibly because they're being, they're being told to do it.
You mean why? So the question is why people aren't being vaccinated?
In your view, is that part of the frustration?
No, I mean I'm not frustrated because I have beliefs that other people may not agree with, and and I know people who I've shared before have come to the conclusion that it's not safe to be vaccinated for them, and I personally may not agree with them, but I respect them as an individual. Do you think
part of the frustration comes from the fact though that up to say a week or so or 2 weeks ago they could actually use everything, access everything, and nothing's actually changed, and now they can't?
I think the frustration is they don't probably feel like they've listened to. I think when there's a government mandate, people accept that it's law, that the government's mandated it, like with hospitality, health and education. People know it's from the government. They can't fight it. The government's deemed that this is to be safe. And to be fair, the government has handled COVID pretty good up to now. So most people accept, well, if the government deems it to be unsafe, okay, we'll listen to them. But with the services, obviously the library and that, the government hasn't mandated, but left it to City Council to decide. And I think that's the frustration for me, is that you have a chance to look at it a bit wider and a bit longer and a bit deeper and actually canvass the community for their suggestions. Do people care if someone is in a swimming pool with them who's not vaccinated? I would suspect the chlorine will kill a lot of the germs. I don't know. But has anyone paused to look at this? Again, I don't know. I just suspect it looks a bit like a knee-jerk reaction to me. And I don't like knee-jerk reactions if you have time to look at them properly. And to be fair, COVID is not in our community rampantly at the moment. Therefore, let's pause, take a breath, and look at this situation. The library, sure, we can go online. It's more the swimming pool that I feel kids are going to miss out on. And I wish there had been maybe an alternative, a couple of days a week where anyone can go to the swimming pool. Again, I don't know the number of people you're dealing with quantitatively.
Thank you. Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Anna. I think we all anguish over the ups and downs of good things, bad.
Can you just get into your microphone there, Councillor Lewis?
I think we all anguish over this issue greatly. If there was an outbreak down here, and we have no idea if there's likely to be one tomorrow, with the 12,000 extra people coming down from Auckland, perhaps. The possibilities, I'm not going to go ask you the question of that because no one knows.
Exactly.
But if there was an outbreak, how would people who want absolute freedom to every facility feel if the hospital got jammed up?
Yeah.
Because there's no,
Okay.
I believe, I don't know if you know, do you have to know what facilities we have got down there, how many respirators we have?
Okay. Yeah, so we'll take a step back. I think when I say a long-term plan is to actually build it into your plan. Like at the moment, we haven't got rampant COVID, open it a couple of days. As soon as COVID is obviously at a certain level in the community, shut it down to non-vaccinated people, but at least consider a plan, not a knee-jerk reaction of all or nothing straight away. I accept that that would be the first measure, logically, to reduce and eventually maybe shut total lockdown. But obviously there's a journey to that, not a total lockdown straight away to non-vaccinated people. But part of your plan could be, yes, why there is not a lot of COVID in the community, let's try it for 2 days a week. Just look at it at the moment. We do not know how this is going to play out. I mean, cases have gone down in Auckland. I don't know why. We don't know how many are going to come down here. No one knows anything, and that's just it. We're dealing on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. So let's, create a plan that deals with that and has contingencies in place to cope with different scenarios happening in the community.
Thank you for your submission. It's not my place to debate, and I thank you.
No, thank you for listening. Is that all?
Thank you. Any further questions? If not, thank you, Anne, for taking the time to come in and speak to us. And may I also thank you for the tone of your submission as well.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good day. Bye.
Mr. Tribe, welcome along.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll just bring the clicker down.
Oh, yep, cheers. I'll take mine off. I'm looking like Darth Vader. Well, kia ora koutou. Most of you know who I am. So, purpose of me being here today, obviously everyone's aware I've got a vaccine pass. I managed to get in the door. Doesn't mean I'm vaccinated, but I have a pass. But for your well-being, I am double vaccinated, stabbed, jabbed and kebabbed. Now, the reason I've come today, again, is I looked at the item coming on the agenda last week and thought, oh yeah, it's sitting there, read the report and thought, yeah, my gut's going to tell me that this committee is going to go with what's currently happening, right? Because you had 3 options, all, some or none, and that was it. So I've got a wee slideshow basically to go through decision making. It might be telling you to suck some eggs, but I'll run through it because I don't believe that council has taken everything into consideration that it should have. And part of that is the principles of local government. So it says there's certain ways that you must act. One is having regard to the views of all of its communities. Now, whether we like it or not, we have a community in this city that's unvaccinated. It's becoming its own community. Do I agree with them? No. I believe everyone should get vaccinated, but again, personal choice. So when making decisions, you should have consideration of the diversity of the community. And trust me, it's getting very diverse. We have far left, we have far right, we have some rather, how would I put it, feral aspects on both sides of the fence. And to me, it's actually quite concerning. It could become a mental health problem. And again, you've got to look at the interests of future as well as current communities. And the likely impact of any decision on each aspect of wellbeing. Now, I'll touch on this because it was raised at the meeting the other day. And again, action on behalf of communities and promote the social, economic, environmental and cultural wellbeing of communities, not the community, of communities. And you must, in the course of decision making, seek to identify all reasonably practicable options and assess them in terms of their advantages and disadvantages. And community views. You must give consideration to the views and preferences of persons likely to be affected by or have an interest in the matter. Now, I noticed within the document, it said that you're not going to consult because the community are aware of it. But are you aware of those individuals' views in the community as to the effects on them? If you don't talk to them, you don't know. But again, you can make judgments, and that's based on the significance. And I noticed within Mr. Cameron's report said it's very significant in terms of the effect on people. So again, that significance when you make judgments, you've got to look at those principles and consider a range of options or the views and preferences of others. So I'll just leave that one up there. It's probably a bit hard to read. Put my glasses on, it's clearer. But when the government were actually looking at the COVID response, the Human Rights Commission gave them some information, and that's specific conditions briefing that they gave the government. And it says, if a measure involving less interference with people's rights could achieve the stated objective, it ought to be used. They also went one step further and said the government must be able to demonstrate that it's fully considered the potential negative impact on people's human rights and balance that against the societal interest. An important element of this is to explain why the proposed scheme does not include the alternative of a negative COVID test for those who cannot prove that they've been vaccinated. It went one step further and said in considering the introduction of vaccine certificates in new areas, it will be important to hear directly from people who will be excluded from those spaces. And that was the Human Rights Commission's advice to government, or special conditions to consider. So within that, the DIA put out guidance for local government. Now within that DIA's guidance, it talks about public facilities. So this says, yes, my premise is a public facility. There are no specific vaccine pass requirements. So it says go to step 8. So step 8. It says we refer local authorities to guidance from the Public Service Workforce Guidance, which I've got a copy of here. And it says local authorities can and should seek their own legal advice. And that doesn't mean the advice of LGNZ. So within the Public Service Workforce Guidance, it says where a prohibition does not apply, agencies can consider requiring members of the public who are accessing premises where public services are provided to have a vaccine pass. Agency considerations need to include these factors: the need to ensure accessibility, the nature of the service, the agency's health and safety risk assessment and vaccination policy. I never saw that in the report last week. Any considerations under the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act and the Human Rights Act? Never saw any mention of that last week. And then it goes on to say, where you decide to require a vaccine pass, you must consider if workers in those premises should be vaccinated. Last week you were told you didn't have to. However, you were given 3 options. I've already raised a consideration of why there wasn't an option to look at having the venues available to people without passes on alternate days. I'm vaccinated, I can decide when I want to go. Other people in the community can't. Excluding them in totality through red, orange and green makes no sense. Like, are we? Or are we heartless? Just me.
Thank you, Mr. Tribe. It's open to questions. There are none. We have a copy of the presentation.
Yeah, you can download it if you like.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your submission this afternoon and for taking the time to come along and join us. We appreciate it.
Close there. Thank you.
Councillors, that moves us on to the next item on our agenda, which is the minutes. Sorry, actually, we need to move the major late item. Yep. So we've got the major late item, which is the naming of the Costello legacy. And the reason it came to hand after the agenda was published, reason why it can't be delayed so we can progress in a timely manner. Would somebody like to move that the item be received? Councillor Scout, Councillor Emerson. Open for discussion. All in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you for that. We've got the minutes from November 9th of PPP.
Move those.
Councillor Soper, seconded. Councillor Scout. Open for discussion. There is none. I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. The minutes of the extraordinary meeting on December 7. Somebody want to move those as a true and correct record?
I'll move.
Councillor Abbott and seconded Ms Cook. Open for discussion. There is none. I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. That brings us to the amendment to the Community Wellbeing Fund Committee Terms of Reference. Mr Morris.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Good afternoon, everybody. This is a relatively prosaic report. All we're doing is amending the governance statement and delegations register in light of some recent changes to the terms of reference for the community fund. With the addition of a youth councillor, it became an opportune time to update those 2 documents with that change to the terms of reference, but also to make a change to ensure that we always met quorum in terms of the number of councillors who are required. So, as ever, happy to answer any questions.
So just to clarify, Mr Morris, the first 3 recommendations are things that the committee can adopt. The fourth is a recommendation for council.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillors, the recommendations are on your agenda. Councillor Lewis.
I'd like to move those be accepted.
Thank you. It's moved. Moved Councillor Lewis, seconded Councillor Soper. It's up for discussion. Committee Chair, Councillor Lewis, have you anything you want to add?
Only that the addition of an extra youth...
It's easier if you take the mask off for
It
speaking.
is, certainly is that. My
Yeah.
mind's working okay, I think. With the addition of the youth member, it's very important that we have the better balance of the councillors, because the councillor quorum regulations, and if we would have to have 100% exception every time of the councillors involved and when the youth council member is there, because the numbers, obviously, the arithmetic's easy.
Thank you. Mr Morris, can I ask, if we require another elected member to attend, what is the process we need to go through to appoint that person?
It's not so much appointing a person, it's nominating a person. It's easier to see you that way. Nominating a person in substitution rather than appointing a new person to that committee. If council was to decide to appoint a person to increase the quorum, then that would be a change through to the governance statement and delegations register, in addition to what we're doing today.
So just the ability to nominate is quicker and more efficient.
Yes, in these circumstances.
Thank you.
In the easy way, may I just ask Mr. Morris, so if on Thursday 2 or 3 of the councillors can't be there, it's a case of the quick ring round.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, it's been moved and seconded. I'll put the motion if there are no further questions. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Mr. Morris.
Thank you.
The proposed road name, a right of way for Tane Way. No, they're not there, Michael. Now they are. Welcome along. We've got a recommendation for the naming of Tane Way.
I'll take the report as read, and if there's any questions.
Councillors, first of all, we need a mover.
I'll move.
Councillor Abbott, Councillor Scalp. Open for questions. Well, that was easy. Worth coming down for. I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Nice to see that progress being made that we talked about at the last meeting. Mr. Day, this time you will need to take a seat. No? The procurement policy. Nick and Hayden, didn't recognise you with your masks on.
Kia ora koutou, everyone.
Can you just make sure you grab that microphone for us? Thank you.
Your Worship, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, I take it so you've got the report in front of you, but if I may, I'd like to cover off on the salient points that are contained within. So this procurement policy was adopted for engagement on the 29th of September, and the engagement subsequently took place 4 to 22 October. We took a targeted approach at suppliers in particular to council and also to the broader ratepayers of Invercargill. So the engagement with the business stakeholders centred around a webinar that took place on the 12th of October. And of interest, there were 89 people invited to that webinar. 63 said they would attend, and 59 actually turned up online. So we're quite impressed with the number who logged in, and we're happy to engage around this proposed policy. And the engagement with the wider public was through our normal communication channels and direct emails to those who were interested. From that submission period, there were 14 submissions received, of which half were from suppliers to council and the other half were from wider members of the public or special interest groups. The 7 submissions from members of the public were generally supportive. However, some requested changes be made. Most of those were around socially interested groups who wanted sort of stronger parts of the policy put in. Feedback from the suppliers was relatively positive, and they just wanted some more clarity around what some of the aspects of the policy meant for them, and when we provided that, they were pretty happy. That covers off. I'm happy to take any questions that the council may have.
Thanks, Hayden. Councillors, we'll start with the mover and a seconder. There are 4 recommendations there.
Happy to move those.
Happy to second, Chair.
Moved Councillor Soper, seconded Councillor Lewis. Open for questions. Good numbers of people who had engaged, which I guess was, from what you were saying, perhaps higher than you'd initially anticipated, around the question of social weightings. How did you resolve that off and through to the recommendations?
In the presentation we did, we spoke about the social procurement representing somewhere between 0 and 10% of the non-price attributes. So to give an example, if 30% is price and 70% is non-price attributes, circular procurement could be anywhere from 0 to 7%. That was a general guideline. There would be exceptions where that could be higher, particularly in areas like artwork, possibly.
Thank you. Councillors, any other further questions or comments? That was easy. I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. I guess one of the things that helps is when you get really good engagement, it gives us confidence in the decision-making process. Thank you for your work through this.
Thank you.
Next item is the Southland Softball Association sign proposal. Welcome along, Caroline.
Good afternoon, Chair, Your Worship. The proposal you've got in front of you is due to the fact our Reserves Omnibus Management Plan 2014 is slightly out of date at this point, so it's not enabling us to help this club put a sign up that's in keeping with the area within which it's sited. So this proposal is to enable that to happen because it does require a council resolution and then resource consent to do so.
So just a question of clarification from my perspective, Caroline, if it's resource consent, non-notified, limited or notified?
We are not sure at this point. So I have checked into that for you, Councillor. And unfortunately, until they actually make the application, we're unsure as to whether it will be non-notified.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, there are two recommendations.
I'll move that way.
Councillor Scout and Councillor Amundsen. Questions, comments? Put it to the vote. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thanks, Caroline. Have we got Betty or Trudy up for the next item? Trudy, welcome. No, you're grabbing Betty. Just up at the top of the table there, Betty. Welcome in from the departure lounge. Thanks for the preparation of the annual dog report. Is there anything that you wish to draw our attention to? You want to just bring that microphone in, please, Betty? Thank you. And you can drop the mask.
I can try. Thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa. Tēnā koe, Mr. Chair. Just for the apologies for the lateness of the report. I can update that as of the animal care facility and the exercise area will be completed by hopefully the 22nd of December.
Councillors, the recommendation is that the report is received. I think it goes, once it's received and adopted, we put it up online.
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
Be advertised.
Moved, Ms Cook. Seconded.
I've got a question.
Oh. Are you going to second it as well, Councillor Arnold?
I'll second it.
Councillor Scout, thank you. Councillor Arnold, your question.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, you've got in the table that I'm looking at here,
yes,
you've got a lot of things covered, but I'm just wondering if it would be possible to know about the rehoming policy. There's a rehoming policy, and how many dogs are euthanized. I mean, I know those aren't pleasant things. One's pleasant, one's not. But you've got, barking dog complaints. You've got so many things here
yes,
that we don't have any idea about that. I mean, if I did some sums here, it could be like a couple of hundred.
we always look to rehome, and I can't give you those correct figures.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it wouldn't be good to include those in the table, and the euthanized. How many are euthanized as well?
Yep. Yes.
Trudy's going to have a crack at that.
Tēnā koe, through you, Mr. Chair. What the report is on our statutory requirements, that would be an addendum, but we're happy to look at that longer term.
I just think it would be good to know, to see how things are trending and whatnot as part of the whole process.
Great.
Noted. Thank you, Councillor. No further questions or comments? Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick question. I presume it's the COVID situation that affected the proactive things between 17 and whatever it is, 489. It's a proactive COVID patrols.
Yes, you're through, Mr Chair, that's correct.
Thank
the
you.
proactive patrols
Yep.
have been reduced.
Thanks, Tim.
Councillors, I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Rezoning of 7 and 9 Kennington Road. We'll just wait for Liz to come through. Gareth, welcome along. Liz.
Kia ora. This is a relatively technical plan change, so it's a change to the Invercargill City District Plan 2019. The district plan allows for, at the moment, there's a piece of land on Kennington Road that is zoned industrial, but the rural rules apply to that because it's essentially a deferred zone. The landowner has done what is required. They now just need a council resolution to get the industrial 3-zone rules to apply to that piece of land. So my only change to the report that you have in front of you would be recommendation number 2, that the committee recommends to council that it resolves because it has to be a council decision in the district plan policy space.
Okay.
Happy to move both those recommendations with the second one amended in that straightforward way.
Thank you. Seconder for that, Councillor
I'll
Scott. Can I just check around the status of the interim number, Liz?
The number has, in the resolution and in the recommendation, I've referred to 7 and 9 Kennington Road. However, since the district plan was drafted and after I've drafted this report, a building consent came in, so we've now issued a number, which is 15A Kennington Road, which will encompass both because there will be buildings across boundaries. So the recommendation refers to 7 and 9 because that's what's referred to in the district plan provisions. The recommendation includes the legal descriptions, just to clarify, make sure that we're clear that what land we're talking about.
Thanks, Liz. Councillors, we've got the recommendations moved and seconded. If there are no further questions, I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Can of Mortein would be handy. Not for the report, obviously.
Thank you.
Thank you. The activities report. Welcome, Trudy.
Kia ora koutou.
Anything you'd like to draw the committee's attention to?
A slight typographical error where we forgot the percentage sign.
Could you take the mask off, please, Trudy?
Oh.
Thanks.
There's a typographical error with the percentage sign missing off the planning and building consent processing times, but other than that, it's still reasonably busy throughout our customer and environment services. Especially interesting to note the higher number of LIM requests compared to this time last year. The property market is still quite buoyant. And our teams have been continuing to track well, especially in the building space in terms of those site visits or inspections, I should say.
Thank you. Councillors, questions? I guess it's too early, Trudy, but probably the next report might include some reflection on the vaccination passport status and the impact that it's having on various customer-facing parts of our business.
Certainly, we can include that next time.
Thank you. Councillors, I'll move that the report's received. Is there a seconder? Ms. Cook, thank you. Questions or comments? I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thanks, Trudy. Grant, don't go far. Thank you. So for this part of the agenda, I'll step back from the chair and let Councillor Amundsen take over.
I have to declare a potential conflict of interest.
Is it a conflict or an interest?
Possibly both, Mr. Chair.
Fine. Then if you declare a conflict like that, you can step back.
I shall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this item is the Te Puawai residential development, and it's a plan change. And so we have Liz and Grant, and happy to hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah, good afternoon. Well, really, I don't think this development needs any great introduction. I'm sure we're all aware of what it is and what it means for the city. Since this item was last brought to this committee, we've had a public submissions process and we've held a hearing. The hearings panel has recommended to this council to approve the plan change, essentially as it was notified and as the council had previously adopted earlier in the year. So the recommendations in this report are for the committee to receive this report and to recommend to the council to approve it, essentially, as notified.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions about this plan change or recommendations? Too easy. Would somebody like to move the two recommendations? Thanks, Councillor Soper. Councillor Kett. Any further questions or discussion? All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Could my vote be recorded as an abstention?
Yep. We're both recorded as declaring a conflict and withdrawing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Grant. Thank you, Liz. Councillors, that brings us to the major late item. Just wait for the excuse me, arrival of Caroline. I'm not having an emotional moment, I'm just joking. So bearing in mind, Councillor Abbott, you don't have the papers. We've got our Parks and Rec manager, Caroline, who's going to go through the issue for us.
Thank you.
Caroline, welcome again.
So the major late item, we really appreciate you accepting this today. What we're looking at here is actually agreeing on a name for the work that we've been doing with the Costello family and the community in Oshara on the pump track that we've created out there for them. The background, I think you all know, is around the $90,000 legacy that was left by Derek Costello. So we've used his money to install this pump track, and we would very much like to, the committee to receive our recommendation around naming this area the Costello Park.
Councillors.
Happy to move that way, Mr. Chair. It's a sensible name and the family's preferred option and a good recognition.
And seconded I note by the Deputy Mayor of Ototara, Councillor Arnold, or other Ototara resident. It's open for questions or comments. It's great to get it to this point, it really is. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much. It's very appropriate. It very appropriate that it should have this name, and I'm sure the residents, as you mentioned, are very happy to do so, and I think it's a great call. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go.
As somebody who was privileged to work with Derek and knew he and his wife quite well, I'm delighted. Thank you.
It's really cool to get to this point because it's been a journey, and I hate that phrase, but it really has been. Thank you. Councillors, if there are no further questions or comments, it's been moved and seconded. I'll put that all in favour.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you.
And thank you, councillors. We have no items in public excluded, so I'll close the meeting just before closing the meeting, because this is it's not our last PPP. We've got one on the 21st. I'll close the meeting. Thank you.